Hello, and welcome to the Be Purely Balanced podcast. I'm Dr. Crystal Couture, and today I'm here with Jen Heilman, a lifestyle mentor, intuitive coach, and a #1 best-selling author, and of course, a Feng Shui ninja on a mission to help you create the life you crave. She teaches women how to move beyond their self-doubt and into an empowered state of being. Clarity becomes clear and constant. Energy levels are rich and always on high. Inspired action is leading the way, and personal growth and results are just simply expected. That's what living empowered and in the flow creates. Pure magic, pure happiness. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you. That's, I love that intro. I was like, so listening to it. So I was like, wow, that's really awesome.
Yeah, you've got an amazing energy, and empowerment is such a facet, such a cornerstone for what women and men need in their lives today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that, it really, is the keystone for my work, and empowering women and having just that feeling of being able to conquer whatever comes your way, is really the driving force for what I do.
So our topic today is really this idea of Feng Shui, and I love, personally, Feng Shui. I love the concepts about it. I love so much of it. But for some of our listeners, this may be the first time that they're hearing about Feng Shui. So what is Feng Shui, and where does it come from?
Yeah, so Feng Shui, it really is a practice of, it's called, the traditional way of describing it is the art of placement. And so it's about enhancing your space in order to make the energy that's in your space flow. And when the energy of your space is flowing and fresh and alive, then it helps you feel fresh and alive and energetic. And it's a practice that's literally thousands of years old. Feng Shui specifically comes from China, and there is practices all over the world that are not called Feng Shui. There's, practices in many ancient cultures that have a similar type of thing, but the specifics that I do are based in Feng Shui, which is from China.
Okay, so how did you come to find being interested in Feng Shui? How did you, decide on this, so to speak, as a profession?
Right, yeah. So I have always been fascinated by space. I was the kid that was always rearranging their bedroom. I would make houses for my dolls, out of shoe boxes. And, it was just always something that was really fascinating to me. I didn't feel comfortable unless my space felt comfortable. And so I was naturally guided to go into architecture, and then that led me into interior design. And really in that work, which was amazing, and I, still practice. There was a point in my life that I really needed to get in touch with my spiritual side. And my son, who is now 11 years old and thriving, was born with congenital heart disease. And so he went through a series of major open heart surgeries, and basically, they told us he wouldn't survive childhood if he didn't have all of these procedures. And so, not to get into all of that, but it was, it was such an impact in my life, and I really had lost touch with who I was, and because my focus was so much on him and his survival, that, excuse me, on the other side of that, when he was around 2 years old, and we really started to see him start to thrive and really come out of that that scary time of almost losing him, I started to really need to discover myself again, and that's when Feng Shui literally like fell in my lap. It was a book that I found in a bookstore. I wasn't even really looking for anything, and I just pulled it off the shelf. It was Feng Shui Your Life by Jamie Barrett, and it spoke to me in such a way that I just, devoured it and started practicing the practices in the book. And much to my delight, the universe responded, and the things that I was asking for were manifesting. And so it was a really great way to connect my spiritual side to this passion about space and understanding fully why I felt so connected to space. And so that's basically how I got into it.
It's amazing how, this experience with your son and all the needs that he was having at that time, how that really triggered you inward. It triggered you toward what you need in order to provide the best for him. And I love how that happens to people. I love that reciprocation of, turning to the self, even when, especially when someone we love the most, needs us in such an extreme way. And it's like, we have to tune in to our own needs. We have to tune into our own guidance first. Otherwise, there's no way we'll be able to help them,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think that that's been a driving force for me to get this work out into the world, is to, help women see that is the main thing that they have to do in order to provide the life that they would like to provide for their children and their families and their loved ones, is if they're not nurturing themselves, if they're not being their whole selves, their most authentic selves, then they're not truly giving that to their people, and so it's just so important.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about your journey. I'm curious now. So you started by tripping upon a book, essentially, and then what happened? Where did you go next? How did you start to kind of build your education about Feng Shui and really take it on as a lifestyle?
Right. Yeah. So it was mostly self-taught in the beginning. I just kept, reading book after book after book, whatever would come through. And I would take little pieces, from, sometimes a book would resonate, sometimes only a part of a book would resonate. And so I just started taking the bits and pieces that I was learning, about space clearing, about, setting up your space and the different, because there's many different practices with Feng Shui as well. There's the compass practice where you literally set up your space according to the directions of, north, west, south, and east. And that didn't call to me as much as the style that I practice. And so it's the Tibetan version. And so it's got a more contemporary view on it. So you can use your space as your space is set up. You don't have to worry about setting up a compass and all that kind of stuff. And it really just spoke to me in trying to make what I was learning more accessible for people. And so that was really my mission, was to take everything in a way that felt right to me, and then to put it back out into the world in a way that people could use it and not get lost in it. I think that one of the main deterrents around Feng Shui is that it's complicated and I don't know how to do it and I'm not doing it right, that kind of thing. And so that was a main part of my mission, was making it more accessible and easier to understand.
Sure. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? I think we've sort of jumped upon this platform. Why don't you, take a few minutes here to talk about the way that the way that you can explain, Feng Shui to your clients, and also a way that might be able to easily, be related to our listeners.
Right. Yeah. So, we can get a little bit caught up in the complications of it and doing it wrong, but primarily it's got to feel right, to you. And you are the most important participants in this whole thing, right? So if it doesn't feel right to you, then the point is being lost. So, for Feng Shui, for me, I try to keep it easy, and making it practical, like just speaking about your entryway and how you approach your house. And if you look at your house as if you're a stranger, and can you find the front door easily? Or is it tucked around the side of the house? Is it hidden away? Is it behind bushes? The entryway to your space tells you a lot about what you're presenting out into the world and these stories that you have. And so basically, I try to help women see where they're holding themselves back. And we do it in a whole new way when we're looking with Feng Shui eyes. And I show them that their space is telling a story about their current circumstances in their life. And usually they're coming to me because they want to change those circumstances. And so I can show them really easily and quickly how they're holding themselves back by using their space as a reference. So if you have, shrubbery covering your front door, and you can't even see your front door, and if you're a stranger and you're approaching your door and it's not easy to find, then the energetic, like the universal energy, is having difficulty finding you as well. And there's a reason they say opportunity knocks. It's because when energy comes through, it comes through that front door, that front entry, and brings itself into your space. And if you're hiding from that, then it tells me a story about, not putting yourself out into the world, authentically, or, not receiving opportunities or not living up to your full potential. And when you can explain it to someone in that physical realm, someone that really relates to, that visual response and can see it in physical form, it starts to click much faster, and they want to change it. And when they change it and they take action and they have that sense of progress and accomplishment, it leads to results more quickly, and they start to manifest things in their lives, and they start to rewrite their story. And so that's why I love it, because it has such profound results, and it leaves you feeling accomplished and progress, in that forward momentum and empowered. So.
Yeah, it's tremendous to think about it, and this is something I'm fascinated by as well. I'm a space seeker like you are. I love the idea of space, for sure, especially from that energetic perspective. So hearing you speak just, of course, really resonates with me. So Feng Shui seems to me, the little that I've practiced, because I don't have training, seems to me that it's so much more than this form of organization, but really rather a lifestyle. And more than that, as you're talking, I'm starting to get this image that our home is like almost like this holographic image of what's inside of us.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I just had a client who was referring to it as her life in 3D, and the word hologram has come up before in describing it. And so it's your life, your current circumstances being manifested in 3D or in a holographic form, so that you can see where you are holding yourself back, essentially. And that's why I love it, because it's right there. The evidence is right there, and you can't it's so hard to see our own blind spots and where we're struggling, because they're just so deeply, in us that we don't even see that we're, living out these patterns. And so when you can show someone in their physical space how they're living out that story, and then they can actually take the action of moving the stuff and removing that story from their life and rewriting it, it's just so profoundly impactful on their life, and they are given the chance to break that cycle and break those patterns and to get back into power and forward momentum.
Sure, sure. So I love this, and this speaks to my heart in a big way. This podcast is all about the healing modalities, and Feng Shui sort of teases into itself as a healing modality, right? So can you touch upon that a little bit, how using the principles of Feng Shui can really help us along on our healing journey?
Yeah, absolutely. For one thing, it energizes us in such a profound way. When you actually, I call it catching the fever of Feng Shui, because when you clear out your space, you're clearing out your mental clutter, your physical clutter. You feel more clear and present and energized. We all want to feel better, and we all want to feel happy. And I really resonate with the fact that when we are happy, if you really tune into that feeling of happiness, your heart rate's a little bit elevated, and you're excited, and the energy is surging through you, and you feel fantastic, right? You feel like you can conquer anything that comes your way. And so Feng Shui really opens that up in us, and it allows our space to in doing the Feng Shui, we're raising the energy of our space, and that in turn raises our energy. And when we're doing that, it just, it feels really amazing. So it's a great way when you get stuck. I think a lot of us just get stuck, or we get hung up on not feeling well, or having something come our way that stops us dead in our tracks. Feng Shui is a great way to move through those things that come up, by just making your bed, or clearing the counter, or clearing clearing your desk, and taking 5 minutes to just, clear that space so that you can make room for the solution to come through and to feel energized and inspired again. And it's just a really great practice that's easy to do, that keeps you in that, forward momentum, instead of feeling stuck. Because I feel like a lot of times that stuckness that we feel comes out in, in physical illnesses and mental blocks. And so if we have this tool, it's just basically a tool to use. And if we can get even more specific, with I'm being blocked in my wealth area, so I can go to my wealth area and do something in that area that, will generate some results. Or I'm feeling blocked in my relationships or my health. That's the beauty of Feng Shui, is you can go to those specific energy centers in your home and do something specific to generate some momentum.
Yeah, so I love how you're talking about this idea of energy, inspiration, and really, how that translates for us in the physical and the mental, and of course the emotional realms as well, right? And what all of that really does for the spirit. It's fascinating. So I'm curious, what would you say is the greatest transformation that you've witnessed in yourself since starting to work with Feng Shui?
For me, it's being able to move past, or to see my cycles, my patterns that show up, and not stepping fully into my power or my potential, and seeing that theme played out in my home, and noticing it and being able to being able to move through it, and just simple things like, once I became aware of that story of not fully stepping into my potential and blocking opportunities that were going to allow me to move forward in my career, I started to see things in patterns that I was doing, just like one of the silliest ones that comes to mind is like feeding the cat, is getting the food out and putting it in his bowl, putting the bowl down, and then perhaps just leaving the fork and the empty can on the countertop, and not following through. And, so now I see those kinds of patterns, throughout the day. So I make a point to then, clean the fork and clean out the can and put it in the recycling, and complete the task, So it's amazing how just these simple things in, creating, these patterns, these more positive patterns in your lifestyle, ripple out into so much bigger things in your life, right? And being able to show up, and commit to doing a podcast like this, in such a bigger way, and following through and just showing up in my life more fully and more presently, So
definitely. And that actually is a great segue into this idea of, Feng Shui coming from ancient times, thousands and thousands of years ago, as a very conscious process, right? And this idea of consciousness, with the methodology, with the energy, not only of, the home, but also of the land, and I'm curious about this because many people that I speak to, especially in New England and in New York, have small homes or condos or apartments. But it's still important, right? To consider the Feng Shui and to consider the role of the land. So how can, those of us perhaps that have smaller homes, smaller condos with little to no land, how can they get tuned in to this idea of Feng Shui and really, that role of the land that the building is situated upon?
Right. Well, it is, in these, modern times, it is difficult to, you kind of have what you have, so it's hard to, that the reason that Feng Shui was even started was to find sacred ground for burial, for when someone passed, that's how they, found these sacred places in the earth. And so we don't, particularly in our culture, we don't have any, history in doing that. We have placed our homes, in the past near water or near something that feels more protective, like at the, the base of a mountain that's going to protect, you from prevailing winds and things like that, and then you have the water that supplies the nutrients for your crops and for you and all that kind of stuff. And we just don't do that anymore. If you're living in a condo or, in a house that's already been built. But what you can do is to really, and I made mention of it at the beginning, was really looking at the outside of your home and how the energy approaches your home. Are you, is there some, flower pots on either side of the door, that creates this energy? You can, if you live in a condo and you don't have a lot of natural elements, you can create natural elements by bringing in, these flowers or hanging a wreath on the door, that has some of that natural element to it, so that you can encourage the energy to flow. we've gotten so caught up in removing ourselves from the natural environment that one of the main practices of Feng Shui is bringing those natural elements back into our living space and reconnecting us with nature. We've tried so hard to disconnect ourselves, that we think that we have control over it, and we don't. We're still very much a part of the earth and its cycles, and everything that we engage in every day has to do with that. And if we can understand those rhythms and cycles, of nature and how we're part of it, then it really eases us in the long term and the flow, and being in that flow of life. So I just keep getting this vision of like a sidewalk leading up to a door, and there being concrete everywhere. So what can you do to add natural elements to that, so that you can be, even if it's just for that moment of walking past the flower pots, be in touch with nature, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I love this idea of getting in touch with nature and bringing nature, from the element of the earth into the home. I think that's great. And I think it's a conscious process in its own right, just being with nature for a period of time and then bringing that nature intentionally into the space.
Yeah. I, encourage people to have plants everywhere in their homes. It's another way of, you feel calmer when you have these natural elements. And Feng Shui has, it's a 5-element practice. And so there is, within the multiple layers of Feng Shui, there's an element layer, and, adding fire and metal and earth and water and what am I forgetting? Wood. Thank you. Having those elements balanced in your home really helps you to feel balanced in your life and in your being.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a 5 elements kind of junkie myself, as you know. So
perfect.
I want to tap in, and the 5 elements are a great way to sort of bridge the gap here. You talk so much about color in all of your courses and on your website, and many of the things that I've heard that you've done. And I'm surprised you haven't brought it up today. But what is it about color that is so important within the home?
So color itself is a vibration, right? So it has an energy to it in itself. And so when we lay the, one thing we haven't talked about yet either is the Bagua map. And the Bagua map is one of the key tools in Feng Shui that allows us to see where the energy centers that I touched on before, your wealth area, your fame area, your love area. There's 8 guas around the entire map. And so it touches on, each area has a color that resonates with it. And so one of the simplest things that we can do if we're trying to create change in our lives and we're trying to energize our space and in turn energize ourselves is to add color. And we can do it really simply, even if, purple, isn't your jam, like you don't want to put purple in your space, but you want to add something to your wealth area. You can very easily have purple construction paper and tuck it, behind the, like a piece of art, a framed piece of art that's hanging on the wall. You tuck it behind that, or you can, if it's in your kitchen, you can put some in the, your cabinets or your drawers, and it helps to raise the energy in that space, and it helps that vibration of that energy, which resonates particularly with that area of your life. So, pink is for love. And then we get into like the elements. Same area is fire, and so it's red or like a fiery orange color. Green is wood, and that rejuvenation of that wood energy. So you can make your way around the whole space and just using color. So it's a really easy way for people to start the process, and that's how I started, was just adding splashes of color in the spaces, and it's amazing how those areas start to, for lack of a better word, vibrate and feel energized. And so, it's just a really simple thing that is really magical.
Mm. So you touched briefly upon the Bagua map. So since this is a primary tool that you and many other Feng Shui practitioners use, why don't we just tap in really quickly to what is the map and how is it useful?
Right. So we orientate the Feng Shui tool, the Bagua. So we always start at the front door, and that never changes. So whatever your primary, not your primary entrance, but the actual formal entrance is the front door. And in New England, we have a habit of not using our front doors, and I think that most of, our country has garages attached with breezeways and side entrances and stuff like that. So we kind of tend to ignore our front doors. But it is really sacred in the practice of Feng Shui. And so we align this map with the front door, and the front door is the mouth of Qi. That's where it enters, the energy enters your space. And so then we line that up and make our way around. There, unfortunately, we don't always live in, square boxes. We live, particularly in New England, there was a little box that was created, and then, the family had, 2 more kids, and then 2 more kids, and they added on, and then they, got modern plumbing, and, so we have these houses that kind of have all these crazy additions and zigs and zags. And so, back, thousands of years ago, we used to live in, yurts or circular, mobile teepees, that sort of thing. And there are no such thing as a right angle in nature. And so we've created these boxes full of corners and right angles, and where energy used to just flow, within these circular spaces. Now we have these angular spaces, and they're creating kind of a havoc in our lives. And so it's really good to understand where, one of these zigs or zags in your space could be a void in your wealth area, and it's creating havoc in your finances, and what you can do to fix that, or perhaps your love area is completely missing, and you are having difficulty finding success in relationships. I am a real believer that we pick spaces that we feel comfortable in. And what I mean by that is that we take our stories and our patterns that we have learned from early childhood, and we tend to choose spaces that resemble those stories. And so we kind of carry them with us from house to house or apartment to apartment. And I have one client that comes to mind, where we were at her apartment and we were laying out the bagua, and we discovered that her love area was completely missing from the apartment. And she just had this epiphany wash over her, and she realized that the last, 3 spaces that she had picked were all had the love area missing, right? And, it speaks to her story about not feeling worthy of love or not being able to find a successful relationship, and so she carried that with her. But finding that awareness, in such a big way in a physical space like that, it does something to you to draw your attention in a whole new way, that allows you to take action, to basically eradicate the story, and rewrite it. And so back to the Bagua, we have all different areas in our lives. I touched on the wealth area and the love area, but there's also creativity. There's like a helpful people, which is all about synchronicity and your spiritual side, things lining up for you in a way. So like if nothing ever seems to go your way, then generally the helpful people area probably is out of alignment. There's your career area, which, is not just about your job, it's about your life path and the path you've chosen, and this deeper knowing of finding your purpose, and what that purpose is. There's the knowledge and self-cultivation area, which is really touching in on your intuition and this knowledge of self and knowing your boundaries and who you are and being strong in that. And then there's a whole other layer, how those, each area, the opposite to the opposite side is, it's the yin to its yang of like the knowledge and self-cultivation area is the love area. So they play off of each other as well. So I can tell if someone's struggling in their relationships, but their love area seems completely intact, then we go over to the opposite side and we see what's going on in their knowledge and self-cultivation area, and generally something's going on over there. And the point is that if you're not fully knowledgeable of, yourself and what it is that you like to do and, who you are, then it's really difficult to be successful in relationships. And so they all play off of each other. So I know that that's really, if you don't know Feng Shui and the Bagua map, that's pretty deep layers, but that's how it all plays together, is seeing these stories unravel, seeing that like there's a financial issue, but what are the underpinnings that are creating that financial issue, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So I do have one more question, but let's first just talk about this. Do you have a reference or a course on your website or anything where if people, perhaps don't have a lot of finances, but are interested in just starting to get a feel for, the Bagua map and that kind of thing, do you have like something that they can access?
Yes, we definitely have Feng Shui freebies right on the website. There's three different free things that you can sign up for. There's a 5-day challenge, which relates love and money, and how you do one thing is how you do another, that sort of thing. And it's a really great introduction to Feng Shui in general. There is Making Room for Love. It's 5 steps to take to Feng Shui your bedroom for relationships. And there's one more, and I am totally drawing a blank as to what that is. But there's 3 on there right on the website. And, there's lots of great information just in the, reading through the website and, what we try to accomplish. I do have a summertime special going on right now that is a 1-hour consultation with myself and a 1-hour consultation with my business partner. So we combine in our connected growth program, we combine the two. We basically look from the outside in, which is the Feng Shui, and we look from the inside out, which is her mindset growth techniques. And so that is, it's usually $497, and it's only $197 for the summer. So that's another option if you're looking to take it to the next level.
Yeah, so there's access to that right on your website under the connected growth section, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so I want to dive into the last question, which is, what would you say would be the most simple, 5 simple tips that anyone can do right now in their home that will hugely impact the energy of their home and essentially the energy of themselves?
Right. So the one of my favorite things is make your bed. That is one of the main things that I tell people. And some people are happy to make their bed. Some people cringe, but it makes a huge difference in how you start your day and how you prepare your future self for coming home and relaxing. And so it's a simple thing to do. You're smoothing out your day by making your bed, and then, you're basically greeting your future self to come home and to relax and rejuvenate. So that's a great one. Just generally not leaving dishes in the sink, making a point to wash your dishes before you, if you head off to work, if you're at home with the kids, before you go do the next thing, just clearing off that kitchen counter so that you have the ability to come back in and start fresh without complication. And just making that a habit, and it really is a great way to nourish yourself and to nourish your family by being able to start fresh every time. Just if you can start somewhere with clearing the space, the best place to start is the floor. So if it's, dirty socks and, toys and whatnot that gets, on the floor from, being a busy family, just starting with the floor and not worrying about anything else, just clearing that off on a daily basis before you head out for your day. So you're not like tripping over anything or, stubbing your toe or stepping on a Lego, like those little things, can really disrupt the flow of our day. And so just making life a little bit easier by quickly taking 2 minutes to just, or get the family on board to, clear that out before you leave for the day. A huge one is really making sure your entryway is open and welcoming and clear, that the door is working appropriately, that people can find the door really easily, that there's the numbers for your house are easily read. If you want to welcome in new opportunities, viewing your space or your entryway with a stranger's eyes to make sure that it's accessible. Like there's the front door again, right? With being able to actually open it. In New England, we're famous for like painting our front door shut and like putting a couch in front of it or something. Making sure that front door actually works and there's nothing blocking it. That's a great thing to try and make happen. So those are like my top go-to tips for just making your life flow more easily. It's the whole point.
I love that, Jen. I love the list. I love this conversation. And I really like the idea of, taking organization to the level of the hologram, taking it to the level of raising the vibration and really tuning into consciousness, because that's where so much good stuff is happening for people. So thank you so much for sharing with us and expanding. And of course, for our listeners, your website is www.jenheilman.com.
That's me.
Yeah. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much. This was really enjoyable. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.